The dawn over Lake Haven was a quiet symphony, a slow unfurling of light that painted the water in shades of gold and amber. The air carried the crisp scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint metallic tang of lake water, a smell that rooted Garrett Ellison to his past. At 42, Garrett was a man built for precision, his lean frame and sharp blue eyes shaped by 20 years as a civil engineer designing bridges, roads, and water systems across the Midwest. His hands, calloused from years of fieldwork, gripped a steaming mug of coffee as he sat on his dock, its boards worn smooth by decades of Minnesota weather. The loons called their haunting melody across the still water, a sound that had soothed him since childhood summers at his grandfather's cabin. The cabin was a relic of the 1950s, an A-frame nestled on 3 acres of wooded shoreline, its cedar walls steeped in the scent of history. Garrett had inherited it 4 years ago, after a divorce that felt like navigating a war zone blindfolded. His ex-wife's lawyer had been relentless, stripping away much of his savings, but the cabin was untouchable, a lifeline to rebuild after a career of high-stakes projects in dusty deserts and humid jungles. Lake Haven, population 2,800, was a tight-knit community of 52 properties scattered along 10 miles of shoreline. It was a mix of year-round locals, fishermen, retirees, small business owners, and summer folks escaping the bustle of Minneapolis. The unwritten code was simple: wave to neighbors on the water, lend a hand if a boat broke down, and mind your own business otherwise. For 3 years, Garrett had found peace here, fishing from his dock, tinkering in his grandfather's workshop, and savoring mornings where the only sound was the gentle lap of waves and the call of loons. Garrett's life had always been about solving problems. As an engineer, he designed infrastructure under pressure, bridges that wouldn't buckle, water systems that wouldn't fail. His colleagues called him the blueprint for his ability to map solutions in chaos. But the cabin was different. It wasn't a problem to solve, it was a place to exist. The workshop, filled with his grandfather's old tools, smelled of sawdust and linseed oil, a reminder of summers spent learning to carve fishing lures. The dock, weathered but sturdy, was where he'd caught his first walleye at age 8. Every morning, he'd sit with coffee so strong it could wake the dead, watching the sunrise paint the lake in colors that made the world feel whole. That peace was about to be tested. On a crisp September morning, as Garrett cast a line into the lake's glassy surface, he heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on his gravel drive. A white SUV, gleaming like it had never seen a dirt road, pulled up. Out stepped a woman in blinding athleisure, yoga pants, and a neon cardigan that screamed city money. Her bleached blonde hair caught the sunlight and she clutched a clipboard like a weapon. Her heels sank into the gravel, but her posture remained imperious, as if she owned the ground she walked on. "Mr. Ellison," she called, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, like a telemarketer selling something you didn't want. "I'm Veronica Hargrove, president of the Lake Haven Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your property's compliance issues." Garrett reeled in his line, setting his rod down with deliberate care. His engineer's mind kicked into gear, analyzing her approach, confident, rehearsed, but with an edge of desperation. "No HOA on my deed, Ms. Hargrove. What's this about?" Her smile tightened, her eyes glinting like lake ice in January. "The HOA represents the community's interests, Mr. Ellison. Your dock, peeling paint, outdated, and that shed." She gestured dismissively at his grandfather's workshop, a sturdy structure that had weathered storms she couldn't imagine. "It's practically a hazard. We voted to enforce aesthetic standards, and non-compliance has consequences." Garrett crossed his arms, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Consequences? We control the community water line," Veronica said, handing him a glossy violation notice, its pages heavy with pseudo-legal jargon. It demanded $500 for aesthetic violations and mandatory HOA membership. "Refuse to join and we'll cut your water by next week. Pay up, sign up, or lose it, your choice." She turned on her heel, leaving a cloud of perfume that clashed with the pine-scented air, her SUV kicking up gravel as she sped off. Garrett stared at the paper, his jaw tight. Cutting off water was a serious threat in a rural community dependent on a shared well system. Most residents relied on the lake's main line, a system Garrett knew intimately. He designed it 15 years ago as a pro bono project for the county, a favor to his grandfather's community. The main line ran through his property, a detail buried in old easements. Veronica didn't know who she was threatening, and that ignorance was her first mistake. Garrett wasn't one to panic. His career had taught him to approach problems methodically, like assembling a blueprint from scattered pieces. He drove to the Cedar County Courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled of dusty files and overbrewed coffee. Clara, a 60-something clerk with a sharp memory and a disdain for bureaucratic nonsense, greeted him with a knowing smile. "Another HOA victim, hun?" she asked, pulling his property file with hands gnarled by years of paperwork. The deed was crystal clear, no covenants, no restrictions, no HOA authority. But Clara's gossip was worth more than the documents. "That Hargrove woman's been in here 6 times this month, demanding control over utilities and easements," she said, lowering her voice. "Thinks she's running a country club, not a lake community." Garrett's research uncovered the truth. Veronica had moved to Lake Haven 18 months ago, buying a $1.2 million mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from a Miami suburb and dropped into the Minnesota woods by mistake. Its glass walls and manicured lawn stood in stark contrast to the rustic cabins around it. She'd declared herself president of the Lake Haven Homeowners Association, a group she'd incorporated with only 12 of the lake's 52 properties. Public records showed her LLC, Hargrove Properties, had snapped up 6 lakefront homes, turning them into high-end Airbnb rentals that brought noisy tourists and late-night parties to the quiet shoreline. But the real revelation came from the county's utility records. 15 years ago, Garrett had designed Lake Haven's water infrastructure, a shared well system feeding the west side of the lake. His grandfather, wary of future disputes, had insisted on an easement clause. The main water line ran through the Ellison property, giving Garrett's family control over its access and maintenance. Veronica's threat to cut his water was a bluff. She couldn't touch his line without his consent. More importantly, her mansion and her rental properties depended on that same line. She was threatening the man who held her water supply in his hands. Garrett's next move was reconnaissance. He posted on the Lake Haven Facebook group, a digital town square, where locals swapped fishing tips and complained about tourists. "Anyone else get HOA water threats or fines?" "Asking for a friend." The responses flooded in like a dam breaking. Ellen Carver, a retired teacher with a penchant for garden gnomes, had received a $400 fine for unaesthetic lawn decorations. The Patels, a young family new to the lake, faced threats of liens over their boat trailer parked in their own driveway. Tom Berger, the gruff owner of the marina, shared that Veronica owed him $2,800 in unpaid fuel bills and had threatened to sue him for discrimination when he cut her off. By evening, a private group chat formed, the Lake Haven Resistance. Its members included Garrett, Ellen, Tom, and 9 others, ranging from 90-year-old Florence Mitchell, who'd lived on the lake since Eisenhower was president, to the Patels, who just wanted a quiet place to raise their kids. They shared stories of Veronica's intimidation, fake violation notices, threats to elderly residents, and pressure to join her HOA or sell their properties. Ellen, with her librarian's knack for organization, started a binder to document every incident. That night, Garrett's phone rang with an unrecognized number. Veronica's voice oozed through, sweet as artificial syrup but laced with venom. "Garrett, sweetie, I saw your little Facebook post." "Stirring up trouble won't end well. I have connections with the county. You don't want to test me." "Just asking questions, Veronica," he replied, his voice steady as bedrock. "You'll regret this," she snapped, the line going dead. Garrett sat on his dock, the waves lapping gently against the weathered boards, the air thick with pine and the promise of a fight. Veronica had picked the wrong enemy, but he needed more than a deed to win this war. He needed a strategy. The next Monday, a county utility truck rolled up Garrett's drive at 8:30 a.m., its tires crunching gravel like a warning shot. Carl Swanson, a lanky inspector Garrett knew from his engineering days, stepped out, looking as enthusiastic as a man facing a tax audit. "Morning, Garrett," he said, clutching a clipboard. "Got a complaint from Veronica Hargrove. Says your water hookup's illegal. I gotta check." Garrett poured Carl a cup of coffee, strong and black, and led him to the main water line's access point, a locked valve box buried under his property. "Check the easement, Carl. My family controls this line, has since '85. Veronica's got no authority here. Bribery." Garrett filed the detail away, his engineer's mind already mapping the battlefield. He thanked Carl, who drove off with a promise to report the truth to his supervisor. That evening, Garrett installed security cameras around his property, high definition, motion activated with audio capability. He'd learned in his career that evidence was the best weapon against chaos. Minnesota law allowed recording on private property, and he wasn't taking chances. Garrett's research deepened. Public records showed Veronica owed $85,000 to creditors, including contractors and credit card companies, with tax liens on her former Minneapolis condo. Her lawyer, a slick foreclosure specialist named Richard Vance, hinted at deeper financial woes. She was running an unlicensed rental empire to fund a sinking ship, and the lake's holdouts, those refusing her HOA, were her targets. At Veronica's next emergency HOA meeting, held in her mansion's sterile great room, the resistance sent Ellen and Tom as observers. Only 8 people showed up, half of them Veronica's rental managers, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Her PowerPoint, titled Preserving Lake Haven's Value, featured doctored photos of non-compliant properties, all belonging to resistance members. During a break, Ellen overheard Veronica on the phone in her kitchen, her voice low but frantic. "The rentals are bleeding me dry. I need these holdouts to pay up or sell. Get the liens ready." The escalation came at 3:04 a.m. on a Tuesday, when Garrett's cameras caught a figure creeping toward his water valve box. The footage was clear. A man in a baseball cap driving a pickup matching Veronica's handyman's tampered with the valve. By morning, Garrett's cabin had no water. The valve, buried under his property, had been deliberately shut. The lock pried open. Footprints in the mud led to tire tracks. Repair cost $200 for a new valve and labor. Garrett filed a police report, calling Deputy Sarah Nguyen, a no-nonsense officer who'd grown up on the lake. She reviewed the footage, her expression darkening. "Property tampering's a felony if damages exceed $1,000, she said, noting the valve and labor costs. "We're building a case, but keep documenting everything." Veronica's behavior grew erratic. She confronted Ellen at the grocery store, accusing her of sabotaging property values over her gnomes. Tom banned her from the marina after she screamed at his teenage cashier, accusing him of conspiracy pricing. The Resistance's binder grew thicker, with photos of Veronica's rental properties hosting loud parties, violating county noise ordinances, and statements from neighbors about her threats. Garrett dug deeper, contacting Lake Haven Properties, the trust managing Veronica's mansion. The bombshell dropped during a call with their manager, Diane. His grandfather's 1985 trust owned 70% of the lake's west side, including Veronica's home. Garrett controlled the trust, making him her landlord. For 4 years, her rent payments had gone into an account he'd assumed was inheritance, never checking the details. She'd been paying her worst enemy to live in her glass palace, all while threatening his water supply. Garrett met Arthur Klein, his grandfather's lawyer, in an office that smelled of old leather and expensive cigars. At 76, Arthur's wire-rimmed glasses and sharp suits gave him the air of a man who'd argued cases before the ink on the Constitution dried. "This is a slam dunk," Arthur said, spreading trust documents across his mahogany desk. "She's violated 14 lease terms, unlicensed rentals, harassment, property damage. Offer mediation first, give her a chance to back down. If she refuses, reveal the trust at the town council meeting. Courts love landlords who try diplomacy." Garrett nodded, his engineer's mind mapping the plan like a water system schematic. Mediation would expose Veronica's desperation. The public reveal would be his ace. The Resistance prepared, Ellen organizing evidence like a librarian cataloging a rare collection, Tom securing marina footage of Veronica's outbursts, and Florence rallying elderly neighbors to install cameras. Veronica's next move was a mistake. She sent a cease and desist letter claiming Garrett was harassing her with his Facebook posts. The letter, signed by Richard Vance, demanded $10,000 for emotional distress. Garrett laughed, filing it in the binder. The war was heating up, and he held the high ground. The moon hung low over Lake Haven, casting a silver sheen across the water that rippled gently under a late September breeze. Garrett Ellison sat in his cabin's small living room, the cedar walls glowing softly under the light of a single lamp. His laptop screen illuminated a spreadsheet of evidence, timestamps from security footage, scanned copies of Veronica Hargrove's violation notices, and notes from the Lake Haven Resistance's growing binder. The air smelled of strong coffee and the faint sawdust that clung to his clothes from an evening spent in his grandfather's workshop, sanding a new fishing lure. The loons were silent tonight, but the tension in the air was louder than their calls. Since Veronica's threat to cut off his water and the subsequent sabotage of his valve, Garrett had doubled down on preparation. His engineer's mind, honed by years of designing infrastructure under pressure, thrived on structure. He'd labeled the conflict like a project, Operation Lake Serenity. The goal was clear: stop Veronica's HOA tyranny, but the path was a minefield. Her audacity in shutting his water valve, caught on camera, had escalated the stakes. The $200 repair bill was a felony-level offense, and Deputy Sarah Nguyen was building a case. But Garrett knew Veronica wouldn't stop. Desperate people doubled down, and her financial troubles, uncovered through public records, suggested she was cornered. The resistance had grown to 15 members, meeting weekly at Ellen Carver's cozy home, where the scent of her homemade oatmeal cookies mixed with the urgency of rebellion. Ellen, a retired teacher with a librarian's knack for organization, had turned their binder into a legal arsenal: photos of Veronica's rental properties hosting raucous parties, statements from neighbors about her threats, and copies of bounced checks she'd written to Tom Berger's marina. Tom, a grizzled marina owner with a beard like steel wool, had banned Veronica after she screamed at his teenage cashier, accusing him of conspiracy pricing. Florence Mitchell, the 90-year-old matriarch of the lake, shared stories of late-night disturbances at Veronica's rentals, her sharp tongue cutting through the group's debates like a fillet knife. Garrett's phone buzzed with a message from the resistance group chat. Veronica's at it again. Confronted the Patels at the hardware store. Threatened to report their trailer as a zoning violation. The Patels, a young couple new to Lake Haven, were shaken but resolute. Their inclusion in the resistance had galvanized the group. Nobody liked seeing newcomers bullied. Garrett typed back, "Document it. Get timestamps and witnesses." He leaned back in his chair, the creak of old wood grounding him. Veronica's tactics were predictable but reckless, like a general throwing soldiers into a losing battle. Her latest move, a cease and desist letter from her lawyer, Richard Vance, demanding $10,000 for emotional distress caused by Garrett's Facebook posts, had only strengthened his resolve. The letter was a bluff as flimsy as her HOA's authority, but it showed her desperation. She was running out of moves. The next attack came at dawn on a Thursday, the kind of morning where the lake's mist hung like a veil, blurring the line between water and sky. Garrett was jolted awake by a low hum, like a generator misfiring. He checked his security cameras through an app on his phone, heart pounding. The footage showed a figure in dark clothing near his dock, tampering with the electrical box that powered his water pump. The hum was the pump struggling, its circuits overloaded. By the time Garrett threw on boots and ran outside, the figure was gone, but the damage was done. The pump's wiring was fried, a deliberate act of sabotage. Repair estimate 1,800, pushing the total damages into serious criminal territory. He called Deputy Sarah Nguyen, who arrived within the hour, her cruiser's tires crunching on the gravel drive. Sarah, a lifelong Lake Haven resident with a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the footage. The figure's face was obscured by a hood, but the truck in the background matched the one from the valve incident. Veronica's handyman, Eddie, a lanky drifter she'd hired for odd jobs. "This is escalating," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Tampering with electrical systems is a felony, no question. I'll need a formal statement, and we're pulling Eddie in for questioning." Garrett nodded, his jaw set. "She's not just targeting me anymore. She's trying to scare the whole lake." Sarah scribbled notes, her pen moving with the precision of someone who'd seen too many small-town disputes turn ugly. "Keep your cameras rolling. We're close to enough evidence for an arrest, but we need to catch her directly, not just her lackey." Garrett recognized the pattern, another of Veronica's complaints. He showed Jerry the septic permit, updated 2 years ago, and walked him through the system, explaining its design with the confidence of an engineer who'd built better systems under worse conditions. Jerry, clearly out of his depth, apologized. "Ms. Hargrove insisted it was urgent. Said your cabin's a health hazard. Did she offer you anything to push this through?" Garrett asked, his tone neutral. Jerry flushed. "She mentioned a consulting fee. I told her to take it up with my boss." Garrett filed another report with Sarah, who added it to the growing case file. "She's testing everyone," Sarah said, her cruiser parked by the lake, the water reflecting the setting sun. We've got complaints from 5 other properties now, all tied to her. I'm pulling Eddie in tomorrow. He's cracking under pressure. That night, Garrett's cameras caught another incident. Eddie's truck parked near the public access road, where someone spray-painted HOA rules on a county sign. The footage was grainy but damning, showing Eddie's distinctive limp as he fled. Garrett sent it to Sarah, who promised a warrant by morning. Veronica's behavior grew erratic. Ellen reported seeing her at the local diner, arguing with the manager over a disputed bill, her voice carrying across the room. "You're all conspiring against me." Tom caught her on marina cameras trying to bribe a dockhand to monitor resistance members' boats. The Patels found a fake lien notice taped to their door, threatening foreclosure for unpaid HOA dues they'd never owed. Garrett's research deepened, thanks to Clara's courthouse access. Veronica's past was a trail of chaos. A Minneapolis condo association had sued her for unpaid fees. A St. Paul landlord had evicted her for running an unlicensed dog breeding operation, and a Duluth neighbor had a restraining order after her harassment. The pattern was clear. She used legal intimidation to dodge debts and bully opponents, leaving when the pressure mounted. The resistance planned their counterattack at their next meeting, held in Tom's marina office, the air thick with diesel and determination. Garrett proposed a 2-pronged strategy: public pressure and legal preparation. "We hit her where it hurts, her rentals," he said. "Post honest reviews online about her properties. Noise complaints, zoning violations, unpaid bills. Let her guests know what they're signing up for." Ellen nodded, her laptop open. "I've got accounts on Airbnb and VRBO. I'll start with factual reviews, cross-referenced with our evidence." Tom leaned back, a grin spreading. "I'll post about her bounced checks. Let's see how many bookings she gets when people hear the truth." Florence, ever the firebrand, suggested a bolder move. "Let's crash her next HOA meeting. Show up, ask questions, make her squirm." Garrett agreed but cautioned restraint. "We stay calm, professional. Arthur's drafting a mediation offer, cease harassment, pay for damages, or we escalate. If she refuses, we reveal the trust at the town council meeting." Clara shared a bombshell. Veronica had approached a county commissioner, Bill Hayes, offering $3,000 to reassess Garrett's property for environmental violations. Bill, a straight-arrow politician who'd served Lake Haven for a decade, had reported it to the district attorney. "She's walking a tightrope," Clara said. "One more slip and she's facing criminal charges." As the meeting ended, Garrett felt a surge of hope. The resistance wasn't just fighting for themselves, they were protecting the lake's soul. He drove home under a starlit sky, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. On his dock, the waves lapped gently and the loons called once more, their song a reminder of what he was fighting for. The October chill had settled over Lake Haven, the air sharp with the scent of fallen leaves and pine, the lake's surface a mirror for the fiery reds and oranges of the surrounding woods. Garrett Ellison sat in his cabin's workshop, the glow of a single bulb illuminating his grandfather's old workbench, where tools lay in neat rows like soldiers at attention. The smell of sawdust and linseed oil grounded him as he pored over a stack of printouts, public records, court filings, and news clippings about Veronica Hargrove. His engineer's mind, trained to find patterns in chaos, was piecing together her history, and the picture was uglier than he'd expected. Since the second sabotage attempt, Eddie, Veronica's handyman, frying the water pump's electrical system, Garrett had doubled down on reconnaissance. The $1,800 repair bill, added to the $1,200 valve damage, pushed Veronica's actions into felony territory. Deputy Sarah Nguyen was closing in, questioning Eddie, who'd clammed up but looked nervous enough to crack. Garrett knew Veronica was desperate, her financial troubles, $85,000 in debts, tax liens, a failing rental empire, driving her to reckless moves. But to win this war, he needed more than evidence of her current schemes. He needed to know who she was. Clara, the courthouse clerk, had become an unofficial member of the Lake Haven resistance, slipping Garrett records after hours. Over coffee at her cluttered desk, she'd handed him a file thick with Veronica's past. "This woman's left a trail of trouble," Clara said, her voice low, eyes glinting with the thrill of exposing secrets. "Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth. She's been run out of every place she's lived." The records told a story of calculated chaos. In Minneapolis, Veronica had run a condo association into the ground, racking up $60,000 in unpaid fees before being sued and evicted. In St. Paul, she'd operated an unlicensed dog breeding business, harassing neighbors who complained about the noise until a restraining order forced her out. In Duluth, she'd keyed a neighbor's car after they reported her for illegal rentals, earning another eviction. Each time she used legal threats and intimidation to delay consequences, leaving when the pressure became too much. Her current lawyer, Richard Vance, a foreclosure specialist, had represented her in 2 of those cases, suggesting a long-term partnership in dodging accountability. Garrett cross-referenced the records with online searches, finding blog posts and forum threads from former neighbors describing her tactics, fake violation notices, bullying elderly residents, and leveraging HOA authority to extort money or property. One post from a Duluth resident stuck with him. Veronica Hargrove acts like she owns the world, but she's running from debts she'll never pay. Watch out, she'll sue you for breathing if it suits her. Back at his cabin, Garrett shared the findings with the resistance via their group chat. Ellen Carver, the retired teacher turned documentarian, responded immediately. This is gold. We can use her history to show a pattern of harassment. Tom Berger, the marina owner, chimed in. Her rentals are tanking. I checked Airbnb, bad reviews are piling up. The Patels added, she left another fake lien notice on our door. County says it's garbage, but it scared our kids. Garrett leaned back, the creak of his chair echoing in the quiet workshop. Veronica's past was a blueprint of her present, and it gave him leverage. But leverage alone wasn't enough. He needed to hit her where it hurt, her wallet. The Resistance's next meeting was held at the marina, Tom's office smelling of diesel and old coffee, the walls lined with fishing trophies and faded photos of Lake Haven in its quieter days. The group had grown to 25, a mix of locals and summer residents united by Veronica's overreach. Ellen spread her binder across a battered table, its pages now a legal tome, photos of Veronica's rental properties littered with party debris, witness statements from neighbors woken by midnight music, and copies of her bounced checks. Garrett outlined the plan. Her rentals are her lifeline, he said, projecting a screenshot of her Airbnb listings on Tom's ancient laptop. She's charging $500 a night for lakefront mansions, but no business licenses, no zoning permits. We post honest reviews, noise, trash, her harassment. Tourists will think twice and her bookings will dry up. Ellen nodded, her glasses glinting. I've got accounts on Airbnb, VRBO, and Google reviews. I'll post factual documented complaints, cross-referenced with our binder. Tom grinned, cracking his knuckles. I'll add her bounce checks and marina bans. Let's see her explain that to her guests. Florence, the 90-year-old firebrand, leaned forward, her voice sharp. I say we go public at her next HOA meeting. Show up, ask questions, make her squirm in front of her own people. Garrett agreed but cautioned restraint. We stay calm, professional. Arthur's drafting a mediation offer. Stop the harassment, pay for damages, or we escalate. If she refuses, we reveal I'm her landlord at the town council meeting. The group buzzed with energy, the air thick with defiance. Priya Patel, still shaken from Veronica's fake lien threats, spoke up. We checked with the county. Our trailer's legal. But she's scaring my kids. We want to fight. Clara, the courthouse clerk, shared a new tidbit. Veronica's been pestering the zoning board, trying to reclassify non-HOA properties as commercial to force fines. They shut her down, but she's not quitting. Garrett's phone pinged with an alert from his cameras, motion detected near his dock. He checked the footage, a figure in a hoodie spray painting HOA rules on his boat shed. The limp and truck matched Eddie's. He sent the video to Sarah, who replied, warrants in progress. Eddie's sweating. Keep your eyes open. By the next morning, the Resistance's online offensive was in full swing. Ellen posted reviews on Veronica's rental listings, citing documented noise complaints and photos of trash-strewn lawns. Tom detailed her unpaid marina bills, warning guests about unreliable management. The Patels and others added reviews, each carefully worded to avoid libel but sharp enough to sting. Within hours, Veronica's bookings plummeted, 3 cancellations by noon, with guests citing community disputes and unsafe management. Veronica retaliated with a venomous Facebook post on the Lake Haven community page. Certain residents are spreading lies to sabotage our community's values. Their dangerous non-compliant properties threaten your safety and investment. Join the HOA to protect Lake Haven. She tagged Garrett, Ellen, and Tom, accusing them of harassment and defamation. The post backfired. Neighbors flooded the comments with their own stories. My mailbox got a $300 fine for the fading paint. She threatened to sue me over my kid's swing set. Her renters trashed the public beach. The resistance shared links to public records, exposing her lack of business licenses and zoning violations. By evening, the post had 200 comments, most condemning Veronica's tactics. Garrett drove to the courthouse to meet Clara, who'd uncovered more dirt. Zoning board's launching an investigation into her rentals, she said, handing him a report. No licenses, no permits, and noise complaints piling up. They're sending an inspector next week. Garrett's mind raced, mapping the next move. The zoning investigation would cripple Veronica's income, but she'd fight dirty. He called Arthur Klein, his grandfather's lawyer, who was preparing the mediation offer. She's cornered, Arthur said, his voice crackling through the phone. Desperate people make mistakes. Keep documenting and don't engage directly yet. That night, Garrett sat on his dock, the air crisp with the scent of autumn leaves and lake water. The loons called, their haunting song a reminder of what he was fighting for. Veronica's empire was cracking, but the war wasn't over. She'd strike back and he'd be ready. The late October wind swept across Lake Haven, carrying the scent of frost and pine as the lake's surface shimmered under a gray sky. Garrett Ellison was at his cabin, reviewing footage from his security cameras, which had caught another of Veronica Hargrove, E.S. handyman, S. vandalism attempts, a fake lien notice taped to the Patel's mailbox. The resistance, now 25 strong, was riding high after their online reviews tanked Veronica O.S. Airbnb bookings and triggered a county zoning investigation. Her bribery attempts, caught on tape by Commissioner Bill Hayes, zoning inspector Carl, and a deputy, had pushed her into felony territory, and her marina meltdown had gone viral on the Lake Haven Facebook group. Garrett S. phone buzzed with a message from Ellen Carver. Veronica S. at the grocery store, causing a scene. Meet us there. He grabbed his jacket and drove to the Cedar Falls Market, a small store smelling of fresh bread and overripe produce. Inside, Veronica stood in the checkout line, her neon athleisure clashing with the store's faded linoleum. Her voice was shrill, accusing the manager, Linda, of overcharging her. "This is a conspiracy," she screamed, knocking a display of canned goods to the floor. "You're all in league with Ellison and his little gang." Ellen and Priya Patel, shopping nearby, recorded the outburst on their phones. Customers gawked, some whispering about Veronica's marina rant. Linda, a no-nonsense woman with a perm and a permanent frown, crossed her arms. "Pay your bill or leave, Ms. Hargrove. You're disturbing everyone." Veronica's face twisted, her manicured finger jabbing. "You'll hear from my lawyer. This town's out to ruin me." She stormed out, nearly tripping over a cart, leaving a trail of spilled beans and stunned shoppers. The video hit the Facebook group within minutes, racking up 400 views and comments like, "She's losing it. Her renters trashed my dock. Time to end this." Ellen posted a link to the zoning investigation, noting Veronica's lack of rental licenses. The resistance met that evening at Tom Berger's marina, the air thick with diesel and defiance. Ellen's binder, now a legal juggernaut, included the grocery store footage, bribery transcripts, and Eddie's arrest report for vandalism. Garrett outlined the plan. "We crash her HOA meeting tomorrow. Ask questions, expose her lies, but stay calm. Arthur's mediation offer goes out tonight. Cease harassment, pay damages, or we go public at the town council." Florence Mitchell, the 90-year-old firebrand, grinned. "I'll bring my bird feeder photos. Let her explain why they're a nuisance." Tom added, "My marina footage shows her renters dumping oil in the lake. County's adding environmental violations." The group buzzed with energy, united against Veronica's tyranny. Garrett drove home, the lake's dark waters reflecting his resolve. The HOA meeting would be their first public strike, setting the stage for the showdown. The HOA meeting was held in Veronica's $1.2 million mansion, its glass walls and beige decor a stark contrast to Lake Haven's rustic cabins. The resistance arrived en masse. Garrett, Ellen, Tom, Florence, the Patels, and 10 others, filling the great room with a quiet intensity. Veronica stood at a podium, her PowerPoint titled Lake Haven's Future, flanked by her lawyer, Richard Vance, and 4 rental managers. Only 6 other attendees, mostly her employees, sat in the folding chairs. Veronica's smile was forced as she spotted the resistance. "This is a private meeting," she said, her voice tight. "Non-members, please leave." Garrett stood, his voice steady. "This is a community matter. Your notices and threats affect us all. We're here to ask questions." Florence held up a photo of her bird feeders. "Why are these a public nuisance?" "But your renters' parties aren't?" Priya Patel waved a fake lien notice. The rental managers shifted uncomfortably, and 2 attendees left, muttering about bad vibes. Veronica's voice rose. "You're spreading lies to ruin me. This HOA protects property values." Ellen, calm as a librarian, projected a zoning report on her tablet. "Your rentals lack licenses. The county's shutting them down. How does that protect anyone?" Veronica's face reddened, her composure cracking. "Get out, all of you! You're jealous of my success." She lunged for Ellen's tablet, but Tom blocked her, his bulk immovable. Richard Vance ushered her to the kitchen, ending the meeting abruptly. The resistance left, triumphant but cautious. Ellen posted the confrontation video online, garnering 500 views and comments demanding Veronica's ouster. Garrett sent the mediation offer via Arthur Klein, demanding she stop harassment, pay $3,000 for damages, and dissolve the HOA. Veronica's response, delivered by Vance, was a counter-threat: $20,000 for defamation, or she'd sue the entire resistance. Garrett sat on his dock that night, the loon's calls mingling with the scent of pine. The HOA meeting had exposed Veronica's weakness, but her refusal to mediate meant the town council showdown was inevitable. Arthur Klein's office, smelling of leather and cigars, was the resistance's war room. Garrett met Arthur to review the mediation offer's rejection. "She's doubled down," Arthur said, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. "Her counter-threat's a bluff. Vance knows she's got no case. But she's desperate, and that makes her dangerous." Garrett shared the latest. Veronica had sent violation notices to 5 more neighbors, citing unapproved fencing and excessive noise from a child's birthday party. The Resistance's online campaign had slashed her bookings by 80%, and the zoning investigation was days from a ruling. Clara reported Veronica had tried bribing another county official, offering $2,000 to delay the inspection. The official wired by the DA recorded it. Sarah Nguyen called with an update. "Eddie's plea deal's done. He's testifying against Veronica. Says she paid him $200 for each vandalism job. We've got her on tampering, bribery, and fraud." Garrett's cameras caught another incident: a stranger slashing his boat's tires, likely hired by Veronica. The footage went to Sarah, who added it to the case. The resistance prepared for the town council meeting. "I'm Veronica Hargrove's landlord," Garrett declared, the trust deed glowing on the projector. Gasps filled the gymnasium as he explained. His grandfather, S. Trust, owned 70% of the lake, S. West Side, including her mansion. Veronica had been paying rent to him for 4 years, unaware he was her nemesis. Her lease violations, unlicensed rentals, harassment, property damage, justified eviction. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others laughing. Veronica's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a stranded fish. "This is a lie!" she screamed, lunging toward the projector. Richard Vance restrained her, his face grim. Florence stood, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You're the only lie here, honey. Pack your bags." Bill Hayes banged his gavel, demanding order. Garrett presented the eviction notice, 30 days to vacate. Veronica's meltdown was epic, accusing a town conspiracy as Vance dragged her out. The crowd gave a standing ovation, phones recording the spectacle. The council voted to dissolve the HOA, citing its lack of legal standing. The zoning board, present at the meeting, announced an immediate shutdown of Veronica's rentals for lacking licenses. The DA confirmed felony charges were pending. Garrett left the gymnasium under a starry sky, the lake's waves lapping gently. The resistance had won, but the fight had changed them all. Veronica fled Lake Haven 12 days later, her SUV packed with designer bags, heading for Arizona. The DA secured a plea deal, guilty to bribery, fraud, and property tampering, with 3 years probation and 300 hours of community service. Eddie, her handyman, got 6 months probation for testifying. Her mansion was repossessed by the trust, and her rentals were sold to local families, ending the party chaos. The resistance met at Ellen's to debrief, the air warm with victory and cookies. Garrett proposed the Lake Haven Council, a voluntary group for conservation and mediation, not control. The group elected Ellen as chair, with Tom and Priya as co-leads. Florence, ever feisty, volunteered to monitor future Karens. Garrett's trust income, swollen by Veronica's rent, funded a scholarship for local kids named after his grandfather. The community rallied, hosting a fish fry to celebrate. The lake's shore alive with laughter and music. The Lake Haven Council launched with a mission: protect the lake's serenity without tyranny. They organized cleanups, removing trash from Veronica's rental days, and planted native grasses along the shore. Garrett led a workshop on property rights, teaching residents to check deeds and easements. Ellen's binder became a community archive, stored at the library. The council secured grants for lake conservation, earning state recognition. Garrett, once a loner, found purpose in community, his cabin a hub for planning sessions. Spring brought renewal to Lake Haven. The council hosted fish fries, boat parades, and a loon festival, drawing ecotourists who respected the lake's peace. Garrett's scholarship funded 3 local students, one studying environmental engineering, a nod to his grandfather's legacy. He and Ellen dated openly, their walks along the lake a new routine. Florence, at 91, led a birdwatching club, her feeders now a community pride. The Patels expanded their garden, free of HOA threats. Tom's marina thrived, his docks bustling with locals, not tourists. By summer, Lake Haven was a model for community resilience. The council's conservation efforts restored fish habitats, earning a state award. Garrett's trust funded a community center, hosting classes on property law and lake ecology. Ellen curated a museum exhibit from the binder titled The Battle for Lake Haven. Garrett's romance with Ellen deepened, their shared values, justice, community, peace, binding them. He proposed on the dock, the loon singing under a golden sunset. The community celebrated, Florence toasting with her famous cider. The lake's serenity returned, its waters reflecting a united community. Garrett, no longer the blueprint, was a leader, his cabin a symbol of resilience. As autumn returned, Garrett stood on his dock, coffee in hand, the lake's surface a mirror for the fiery trees. The fight with Veronica seemed distant, yet its lessons endured. Know your rights, build community, stand firm. The Lake Haven Council became a statewide model, with Garrett and Ellen speaking at conferences. The scholarship grew, funding 10 students by 2026. The community center hosted weddings, classes, and fish fries, its walls lined with photos of the resistance. Florence, at 92, wrote a memoir, dedicating it to Garrett. Tom expanded the marina, naming a dock after Ellen. Garrett and Ellen married in a lakeside ceremony, the loons their soundtrack. Lake Haven's legacy was clear. A community united could overcome any tyrant. Garrett's final lesson, shared online, went viral. Protect what's yours, but fight for what's ours.